The Raptors lose their first game of the West Coast road trip. Collin Murray-Boyles leaves the game with a thumb injury. It was tough. Let's go to the film room.
The only thing that's originally filmed is that and I've studied older films and tried to figure out how I got that impression. I always get amazed when I'm in the cutting room.
The unique thing about film is an art form
Exactly.
is the editing.
All right, it was a 1-point game when Collin Murray-Boyles got hurt midway through the third quarter. The Raptors then got outscored 39-23 the rest of the way. CMB was working on a really good game before he got hurt. We'll see if there are any updates on that front. X-rays were negative. We'll see if he ends up playing on Tuesday against the Warriors. That being said, CMB was off to a really, really good game. Let's talk about that. All right, CMB's playmaking was really nice in this game tonight. Had 5 assists, and I like what he does in this dunker spot area, really utilizing his finishing ability and his gravity in this area of the floor to be able to make passes and create open shots for guys like Mamu. This is a set play, so he knows what the reads and options are. You know, Brandon Ingram is coming here to set a pin down, but Rui Hachimura is sagging off, so instead BI is going to cut. Right? And now it's on BI to engage the help defender and Rui, and that's exactly what happened. So the pin down is actually now from Jamal Shed for Brandon Ingram to pop out and run a dribble handoff. They top lock that, and so now the second action is for Brandon Ingram to go back door. Rui Hachimura has to help on that, and that creates an open corner opportunity for Sandro, who knocks down the 3. Now high pick and roll situation between Brandon Ingram and Mamu. And he just slips into this area of the floor. And now Luka Doncic has to step up, right? As the defender, he has to step up because Ayton is caught in space. That's exactly what happens. Lob to Mamu. Yeah, and the defense on Luka was really nice too. So in this game, stonewalls him on this drive. Does get burnt on this little wraparound, but then recovers and blocks his shot. This time as the help side defender, great job of sweeping up and blocking that shot. And then, being a garbage man defense on offense, right? So he runs a pin down for Brandon Ingram to pop out. The natural progression, as you see Jake LaRavia fight through the screen and LeBron is occupied, is for CMB to cut this way, create an opening for himself. And that's exactly what happens. Boom. Again, I've really liked what he does in this dunker spot area. Either as a playmaker or as a finisher, doing some good stuff here. Takes his time and finishes over Ayton. Yeah, that was a good game from Collin Murray-Boyles until he got hurt, folks, which is going to be a really tough situation for the Toronto Raptors. They are already paper thin at the center spot, and Collin Murray-Boyles, of course, for all of his great things that he can do, is an undersized center. And, they had to play Jonathan Mobo 14 minutes tonight. Sandro Mamukelashvili had 24 minutes. They are going to have to extend their rotation if CMB misses time, because now this would be Jakob Poeltl, who is out, RJ Barrett, who is out, who was, by the way, shout out to Michael Grange. He posted a video of RJ actually working out pregame. Looked like he was good. Seems like he will probably be ready to play at some point during this West Coast road trip. That is a good sign, but bear with me for a second. So Jakob Poeltl out, RJ Barrett out, Jacoby Walter out, and now potentially CMB out as the Raptors head into an all-important stretch of basketball. I've talked so much. If you remember last episode, I talked about this being sort of the moment of truth for the Toronto Raptors, strictly because I think this is one of those points in time in the season where the going is getting tough for them. Injuries are hitting them, and depending on how this 8 or 9 game stretch before the trade deadline shakes out, it could really impact the rest of their season. And whether they're battling for 4, 5, 6 in the Eastern Conference, or 6, 7, 8, or even 7, 8, 9 in the Eastern Conference. That's how close and tight some of these playoff races are. And so the Raptors have to be very cautious here. At the same time, what are they going to do? Their players are injured. It doesn't seem like Jakob Poeltl is close. It doesn't seem like he's really ramping up in any sort of – there hasn't been an update. It's good that RJ Barrett is back, and hopefully Jacoby Walter and that hit pointer will be back soon. Hopefully, Collin Murray-Boyles is not injured and ends up playing, or at least maybe missing one game or two games and coming back at some point during this West Coast road trip, because boy, have they needed him, and boy, has he been effective. I think he has been one of the 5 or 6 best rookies in the NBA this season. We've talked about it. Shout out to Pull Up Trey. Those guys have talked about the all rookie teams as well. I think he absolutely deserves an all rookie spot, and he's playing like it the last 2 months with how impactful he's been. He's slotted in as a starter, and despite being undersized, has been massively impactful as a rebounder, as a shot blocker, as a defender. Obviously, the defensive rating when him and Scotty Barnes are on the floor is through the roof, and so they've developed a real identity here with Collin Murray-Boyles as their starting center. Now you rip that. You take that away from a team that is also missing their starting center, that is also missing their starting shooting guard, that is missing a rotation player in Jacoby Walter. And this is a tough situation to be in for the Toronto Raptors. This game itself was sort of a symptom of everything the Raptors have been going through over the last 10 games. The shooting was woeful. It was a bad shooting performance. They couldn't get any offense going. A lot of their shots were tough, difficult shots. They were 7 of 32 from 3 tonight, 22% from 3. They couldn't hit anything. We'll get into their zone offense in a second. But even their stars, right? Even Scotty and BI, I thought they had inefficient scoring performances. And it comes back to the fact that those guys are being asked to make and take a lot of tough shots. 21 shots for Scotty Barnes on 22 points, 19 shots on 19 points for Brandon Ingram. A lot of those guys, like those two guys, make their work in the mid-range and paint area, and it's going to end up in inefficient nights if they can't get easy opportunities. Scotty Barnes was working so well as a roller and finisher. That wasn't available to him as much tonight. Brandon Ingram, obviously is a catch-and-shoot player. He knocked down 2 threes tonight, which was good, but overall the efficiency of what he can do in the mid-range area can wane. And now you're looking at, okay, where are we going to get efficient offense from? Where are we going to generate good quality looks from? They didn't get it from Emmanuel Quickly tonight. I thought Quick had moments in his first game back. Start of the third quarter, he gave them a good punch. End of the second quarter, he gave them a good punch. Ended with 9 points and 7 assists. But you need more from him, especially when you don't have R.J. Barrett and Jakob Poeltl and Collin Murray-Boyles. You need him to be taking way more shots than 9. And so it was Mamu who stepped up off of the bench. He scored 20 points tonight. He was really the only other source of offense for the Raptors and provided a major boost for them in that first quarter. He scored 12 points in that first quarter, really provided them some life. But you look up and down this box score, and they couldn't get anything from anybody else. Ochai Agbaji, a big fat 0 of 5. Grady Dick, again, 0 points. 0 of 2. And this is disappointing because the last 2 or 3 games, Ochai and Grady have played well. They've both played very well. And so you would hope that they could build on those performances heading into LA, and they just didn't. So this is, like I mentioned, a symptom of a bunch of problems for them. Of course, the injuries are impacting how effective the Raptors can be. And boy, is it impacting their offense. I think defensively, they find ways overall to execute and compete. And if you filter through the deep end of their rotation with Jonathan Mobo and Jamison Battle and AJ Lawson, etc., you have some decent defenders there that can kind of hold down the fort, if you will. But the offense is what's desperately lacking. And, they miss the screening ability of Jakob Poeltl. They miss the rim running transition play of RJ Barrett. And of course they miss Collin Murray-Boyles and his short roll playmaking. So let's talk about the zone offense, because I thought the zone offense has been bad. And it has been bad all season, folks. The Lakers threw out a zone offense a few times in this game and completely flipped the script for the Raptors. I have the stat here if I can just quickly pull it up. Okay, I got it here. So the Raptors zone defense, they face more zone than 75% of the NBA. They're 8th in zone frequency that they see as an offense. They score 0.878 points per possession, which in layman's terms is very bad. 26th in the NBA in terms of how efficiently they score against zone defenses. Not good. Let's break down some of their issues there. Yeah, Jared Vanderbilt is confusing me because he is running all over the place and he's out of position in the zone. But essentially, it's a 1-3-1 zone. So you have one guy at the top, you have three guys here, and then one guy at the bottom. That is a 1-3-1 zone. It's a little bit difficult to, a lot of people will say, and this is conventional wisdom, is to get someone in the middle of the floor to be able to break the zone, right? That is the best way to break a zone. But when it's 1-3-1, it's a little bit more difficult to make these passes into the middle of the floor. And so Scotty has to come out all the way out here to get an open opportunity. And honestly, nothing comes of it. They run a bunch of pick and rolls, still aren't able to get into the paint whatsoever. And Collin Murray-Boyles has to force up a shot. Now, I think this time, this is why the Lakers zone worked pretty effectively. This time they go into a 3-2 zone or a 2-3 zone. And this is when you can use the zone breaking capabilities of Scotty Barnes. But Mamu instead zips this pass to Grady Dick, and Grady decides to opt for a step back 3 against LeBron. That's a tough look. All right, so we're back to 2-2-1. 2-2-1. And so it's a little bit easier to work and get into the middle of the zone here against this type of zone defense. That's exactly what happens. Ochai tries to flash middle, and they're just a little bit too late in finding these opportunities. And the Lakers do a decent job of making themselves big and making it difficult to get to those spots. But again, nothing really materializes here. They flow into a pick and roll, and then Shed, still not able to get downhill, just forces up a shot. Now, in the second half, they were a little bit better, but not too much better. So as we see here, once again, 1-2-2 zone, right? Similar zone defense here. And by the way, zones can change into man later in possessions. That's how defenses can mask some of the things that they do. But anyways, Collin Murray-Boyles tries to flash middle here into this area of the floor. But so does Scotty Barnes, and so now it's kind of cluttered in this area. And just the spacing is not right. As they try to get into the teeth of the defense, nothing happens. And unfortunately, Quick has to hoist up a shot. Yeah, so ball movement is essential, and getting the ball into the corner here that you'll see in a second is very important as well. So, BI does this. Good job of flashing corner from Ochai, and now the defense has to help, right? They have to send DeAndre Ayton from the low block to come out and help on this. And now this defense is scrambling a bit as you see Jake LaRavia have to pop out too quickly. And boom, you get Scotty Barnes in the middle of the zone, much more open now. And you find him, and he settles into a mid-range jumper. That's a good way to break a zone, although it took a little bit. And yeah, there were a lot of possessions like that, folks. A lot of possessions where the Raptors were still trying to figure out zone coverage and how to beat a zone. And look, this is something that they face consistently. Now, of course, if you make your three-point shots, the zone is easy to break. But the Raptors, as of late, have not been making their three-point shots. I was looking at this earlier today just because I was curious, but they're 29th in three-point percentage over their last 10 games, which is, in case you didn't know, not good. And they didn't shoot the ball well tonight either. They've been missing from three, and so the regression to the norm, if you will, has kind of hit them in a major way. They're not getting those outlier shooting performances. And truthfully, from their shooting guard trio of Grady and Ochai and Jacoby, who's injured right now, and Jameson Battle, they haven't got enough, man. Those guys have not developed enough to be consistent, reliable pieces in a rotation, and so your shooting is severely lacking because the only guy on your roster that is even a modicum of a talented shooter is Emmanuel Quickley. He's the only guy who is a legitimate three-point shooting threat, and even he can be inconsistent on certain nights. And them's the breaks, folks. This is sort of the situation where the Raptors are at right now, where they really have to figure out a way to grind out a couple of wins until their guys can get healthy. Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a moment of truth type of situation for the Raptors because I think it will in many ways determine what they do at the deadline, what they end up doing. Maybe they make a trade earlier because of these injuries and needing to fill out their rotation, and what they overall end up being positioning and seating wise. So very, very tough situation for the Raptors to be in. I will bring back a quote that I read from Sam Presti a couple of weeks ago. I was doing this in preparation for a pod, but Sam Presti said, "The sky falls for an NBA team twice a year. Every single year, it falls twice a year. One, obviously, is when you either get eliminated from the playoffs or get to the playoffs and lose. And the other is at some point in the season when you're dealing with injuries, when you're going through a tough part of the schedule and things aren't shaking your way, you don't have your shooting is not working." And that is the exact stretch that the Raptors are going through right now. Now, for what it's worth, to start January, they've played some good basketball. Like they were 7-3, I believe, before this game. It's just that they're heading into a tough stretch, and we know ahead of time that they are injured. And so how are they going to sustainably get good performances from their guys? That's the main question moving forward with this Raptors team. But hopefully health. Hopefully health. I will end it with that. Hopefully health, folks. As always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you guys on Tuesday for the Warriors game. Later. Peace.